Okay. Hello, this is
Hello.
Anita with Harbor of Hope's Dog Rescue, and I am so excited to find out about your rescue. Very, very excited. So, like we just
Great.
were talking about a few minutes ago, you're going to tell me about your rescue and how you got involved.
Yes. I got involved in 2018.
Okay.
Um, my husband passed away in 2016, and I spent 2017, I spent that year just trying to get my feet back under me and, get squared away. I applied to foster with a rescue. They brought a dog out to me, and I ended up adopting her. She's a husky.
Oh,
So there's you either love huskies or you don't, with a
right,
lot of people. So she was some people call it a foster fail. I call it a foster win. Okay.
right.
Um, so I was with Muddy, and then I got involved in doing applications processing, and it was
Okay.
with Muddy Paws. Harbor of Hope basically was comprised, there were four of us that were with that previous rescue. We wanted a smaller group, and so we left 2019
Okay.
and got everything together, got our 501c3 together and everything, and launched our rescue in October of 2019,
Okay.
just prior to the pandemic.
Of course. Of
So
course.
yeah.
Everything is either before or after the pandemic,
Yes,
right?
yes, right. So and our whole idea was, if we had a smaller rescue, it's more like a family. Okay.
Okay.
We maybe have maximum 35 people in our rescue.
Okay.
Not everybody fosters, but we have people that handle fundraising and events
Okay.
and applications processing and things like that. So
Okay.
it's been, I personally feel it's been awesome.
Great.
Rescue has its ups and downs.
It does. Okay.
That's how Harbor of Hope was born.
Okay.
We just decided that we were going to start our own rescue because we wanted a smaller one.
Mm-hmm.
And so far it's worked out really well. We have, since launching in October of 2019, we have adopted out approximately 430 dogs.
Wow.
And that's pretty good for a small rescue.
That is wonderful. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is very good. Yes.
Yeah. Most of our rescue dogs that we have, we either pull from high kill shelters,
Okay.
like down in Amarillo, Texas, or
Okay.
Oklahoma. We also have a group called Furry Hearts that we work with out of southern Missouri.
Okay.
And they're not a rescue. They don't foster. They just pull dogs out of pounds and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look for rescues that will take them in.
Okay.
Okay. We don't usually take owner surrenders.
Okay.
And the reason we don't is that there's usually always a reason why somebody is surrendering their dog.
Okay.
And sometimes we don't always get the whole story.
Okay.
So we're very careful, because we will not pull a dog and just put it with any foster.
Right.
We make sure that dog is going to match with that foster and the foster's family and whatever other pets they have.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Okay.
the majority of the dogs that we pull come from, like I said, high kill shelters out of state or down in southern Missouri. That is a hotbed for dogs just being turned loose. And if somebody wants to adopt from us, we have a website, and if you go online on the website, there is an adoption application,
Okay.
and they would fill that application out, and then submit it. And then once we get the application, then we review it to make sure that, you know, they appear to be a good family, you know, looking for a dog. There are some things that we will not, I don't even know how to describe this. We have a hard stop with anybody who currently uses shock collars, e-collars, or, you know,
Okay.
prong collars and things like that, because we are 100% advocate 100% positive reinforcement.
Okay.
Okay. That's not to say that there haven't been times that we've had people that, you know, we've actually ended up talking with them, going out and visiting with them, and then determined that, yeah, you know, maybe we were a little bit hasty, you know, in
Mhm.
doing this, but
Okay.
that's the beauty of having a small rescue. You can do
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, the online adoption, or the online application, they fill it out, send it to us, and then we get it and we go from there. We usually
Okay.
we allow 7 to 10 days to process the application. And
Okay.
what that is 7 to 10 days from the time we get their application to the time we finish processing the application. And if it's warranted, schedule a home visit
Okay.
and have the dog adopted.
Okay.
Because most people, when they're wanting a dog, they want it right away,
Yes.
you
I
know?
know. I've been there.
Okay, you know,
I've been there. I was very impatient until I learned
and
more about the process.
yeah, and I understand that, you know, we all understand that, but we also have to do our due diligence, you know, to
Oh,
make sure that
exactly.
they're a good fit. When
Right.
we process an application, we ask for references that aren't related to the people.
Okay.
We ask for their vet, because we will check vetting, verify vetting on any existing dogs that they have or cats, and also any dogs they've had in the last 5 years.
Okay. So you guys go
Um,
back 5 years. Okay.
yeah, we just go back 5 years. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else. We do check home ownership. And we
Okay.
do that because we have run into situations where people have indicated that they own their home when in fact they don't. And landlords have apparently, I can only assume, indicated to them that they couldn't have a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ask if they own their home, we ask if they rent. If they rent, we ask for the telephone number and name of the people they rent
Right.
from. Okay.
Okay. Right.
Oh, if you apply for a dog, and there usually on our applications, you can list 3 dogs that
Okay.
are available. Okay. If for
Okay.
some reason they don't get their first choice, then we keep the application on file for 6 months.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So that means that they can, you know, at any time they can come back during that 6 months. And I'll be
Mm-hmm.
very honest with you, we've had some that have gone longer than 6 months, you know,
Right.
that we're just waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, we hopefully have them already processed. Then we will determine if we feel like they are a good match for the dog that we've got. So it basically boils down to, we have to feel comfortable that the dog the person is applying for is going to match well with their family
Right.
environment and living, you know, conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
what recommendations do you have for someone who wants to adopt?
Right.
I think the key thing there is we look for consistent vetting, Teresa, on
Right.
current dogs or previous dogs.
Okay.
You know, we know that dogs should have an annual heartworm test.
Okay.
We know that, well, by law, they're required to have rabies.
Right. Exactly.
But we also require that they have distemper parvo. They be kept
Right.
current on that. Bordetella, that's not a core vaccination.
Right.
It's something that if a person's going to board them, you know, so that's not a big deal. Leptospirosis vaccinations have recently, I want to say just since 2019, when we had all the flooding,
Yeah.
leptospirosis has reared its ugly head in this area. So although it's not a core vaccination, we do try to encourage people to get that done, particularly if they
Okay.
take their dogs out, you
Mhm.
know, to lakes or, you know, things like that. So the main thing would be they need to be consistent on their vetting. You know, you
Okay.
can't take your dog in 1 year and then wait 4 years to take him back in, you know, to
Mhm.
get,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, because the rabies shot's like once every 5 years. So what you're saying is that you're encouraging them to do their annual checkups. And then is the heartworm. See, there are associations that are hard and fast heartworm prevention 112 months a year. And yet during the pandemic, when people were so economically challenged, I think is where we got away from that, you know, as pet owners. And be honest with
sure.
you, my dogs are in the house 95% of the time, you
Yeah,
know. So you would look for, okay, so the 12 months is not a hard and fast rule. It's more that an annual heartworm
yeah.
test.
We
Okay.
require a heartworm test. We want
Okay.
to see a heartworm test. If we have somebody who does not have an annual heartworm test and does not administer heartworm preventatives,
Mhm.
we take that as an opportunity to educate them.
Right.
So we will send them an email that basically goes over what's involved when a dog gets heartworm.
Mhm.
And we can relate very much to treatment of heartworm because several of the dogs that we've brought in have been
Mhm.
heartworm positive,
Right.
which in pounds and high kill shelters, that's a death sentence for them because
Right.
they're not going to pay the money and they're not going to take the time to, you know, let that dog recuperate.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we take it as an opportunity to educate the people, send them the email, and as long as they commit to us that they are willing
Mhm.
to not only do the annual testing and the preventatives,
Okay.
but we also ask that they commit to doing that with their existing dog,
Right.
which is just kind of our way of, you know, let's get,
Mhm.
we've got too many dogs that are coming up heartworm positive.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really positive thing to be saying for your rescue, because there are so many of them now that are hard and fast. Nope, you don't do this, you're denied, you're automatically denied. Where as if like there are a lot of people out there that don't understand what's
right,
involved. And if
right.
they knew and they could make that commitment, I mean, let's just say that they might be an awesome owner of a new rescue and
Oh,
give that,
absolutely.
you know, that great, you know, that dog the chance.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
right.
We have a link that we provide for them so that they can go to this link and read what the American Veterinarian Association,
Okay.
you know, has, so they can
Mhm.
read what's involved, what is done when a dog tests positive for heartworm, the
Mhm.
approximate cost for it, you know, and things like that. So, you
Right.
know, like I
Yeah,
said,
definitely.
we've had very good response to the emails that we send out.
Good.
What can someone do if they're denied?
Great.
Um, a lot of times denials, well, I think I mentioned earlier, denial, we will deny if somebody is currently using an e-collar, a shock
Mhm.
collar, or prong collar.
Okay.
We do deny on inconsistent vetting. If we've got
Okay.
somebody that, you know, hasn't vetted their dog in 4 or 5 years, then
Right.
what's what is there to make us think that they're going to do better, you know,
True.
with a different dog?
True.
Um, most people, if they're denied, I want to say it's probably a split 50-50, you know, 50% of them will go, okay, fine, you know,
Right.
50% of them will respond back to us and we will have a dialogue with them.
Okay.
And in fact, I know that there have been ones that we have denied. And after going out and talking with them or visiting with them over the phone and
Mhm.
things like that, doing the home visit, that we've determined that they would make good adopters.
Okay.
So You
I
know,
mean, you
it's
have
not
that
a,
feeling, right? You have that
yeah,
gut feeling. I mean,
yes,
definitely when you're this involved, you have those gut feelings
yeah.
about people.
And I forgot to mention the four of us that started the rescue. Our director has over 10 years experience with
Oh, good.
rescue. I have, well, just since, I guess I have 5 years
Mhm.
experience. One of our other people had over 15 years experience, you know,
Okay.
with rescue. So it's, yeah, it's just a lot of cumulative knowledge that you know, try to apply. And then, like you said, it's a gut feeling, you know. I
Mhm.
mean, if you talk to
Right.
somebody, and I will be very honest with you, if somebody comes back and just blasts us because we've denied them,
Well,
we're
that's pretty
probably
much a guarantee, not.
we're probably not going to be in the right frame of mind to contact them and go, let's talk about this.
Yeah, exactly. No, I
But
can't
we've
blame you
had
one bit.
yeah, we've had numerous people that have been very respectful when they've, you know, written
Oh,
back
yeah.
into us. And, you know, as far as we're concerned, they at least deserve to be heard, you
Right.
know. So a denial, if they won't give up using an e-collar or a shock collar or a prong collar, then I'd say that's pretty much a done deal. They're denied.
Right. Okay.
Inconsistent vetting, if in talking with people, we find out, oh, that, you know, we missed a year because, you know, a family member was sick and we spent most of the time at the hospital and things like
Mhm.
that. I get that, you know, that
Right.
happens. And
Right.
so, you know, if everything else checks out and if they were consistent prior to that and after that, then yeah, we're probably going to go ahead and go forward with the application. So,
Okay. Very good. How about your
uh,
pricing? That's our
okay,
next question.
okay, our pricing, we did a competitive market analysis of the
Okay.
rescues in Omaha before we set our pricing.
Okay.
Okay. And we basically landed pretty much in the middle, you know,
Okay.
of what everybody does. But we do our pricing based upon the age of the dog, not the
Okay.
type of the dog or anything like that, but the age of the dog.
Okay.
So, and we try to keep it the most that we the highest adoption amount that we have is $375.
Okay.
That's for
That's very
puppies.
reasonable. Right.
That's for puppies. And
Okay.
then it goes down from there, you
Okay.
know. So again, like if we get a purebred, uh, well, we we rescue a lot of healers,
Yeah.
a
I
lot
bet
of
you do.
border collies.
I bet you do.
Because for some reason, it just seems like people, I don't know, once the dogs have served a purpose or they're not doing what, you know, their owners think they
Mhm.
should do, then, you know, they just go, well, let's just turn them loose and let them run. But I
Yeah.
mean, if we get a purebred dog in, depending on what its age is, I mean, it could run, it's never going to go above $350.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because 375 is what we charge for puppies.
Okay.
So how can someone get involved if they can't adopt? Oh, easy. They can fill out a volunteer form, volunteer application. Again, it's on our website.
Okay.
We have numerous things that they can do. One that's very critical is an applications processor,
Okay.
because they're the ones that actually do the vetting and you know, the follow-up and things like that on
Mhm.
the actual application. And we can always use them.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
we have fundraising, we have events, we have people who may want to be responsible for transporting dogs. In other words,
Mhm.
there's two different ways to transport. One would be to go pick up dogs that we're bringing into the rescue. That involves a lot of travel,
Right.
because I've gone all the way to Oklahoma, St. Louis, Wichita, Davenport, Iowa, Ames, Iowa, you know, just, oh, Valentine, Nebraska, you
Okay.
know. So, and it's fun. It's fun.
Right.
It's great to pick the dogs up. It's wonderful to see them, you know, a week or so after they enter their foster home and see how different they are and how,
Mhm.
you know, appreciative they are. So there's transportation, that people can work on, but they can also do local, like if we're having an event and somebody can't make it with their foster dog, then a volunteer can say, hey, I can go pick that dog up and take it to the event. Great. That's,
Mhm.
that's what we
And I've
need.
done that for Little White Dog Rescue. I've done a
Okay.
couple meet and greets where somebody says, oh, we can't get our foster dog there. And I'm like, oh, me and my daughter will come by and we'll pick them up. And then
Yeah,
it's really been nice because we are the extra hands there, because a lot of the fosters are busy answering questions. And
sure.
let's say their little kid wants to hold them. Well, Madison and I would help with that, because
Yeah.
we all know that kids can be a little bit rough
Uh-huh.
with,
Mhm.
dogs. So we would be that extra hands to kind of monitor
Yeah.
that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I really enjoy the meet and greets. So that's how they get involved. If they don't, if
Okay.
they, uh, they can also foster.
Okay.
And I think your next question was, how does one become a foster family? Same thing, the volunteer application. They would put down that they want to foster. We give them a list of dogs of ages and weights
Okay.
and behaviors and things like that. And then they can choose. It's almost like a
Mhm.
menu, Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to foster a dog that is not over 25 pounds, and
Right.
some people say I have to have a dog that is house trained. Some people say I don't mind working with any dog. I can handle dogs that have behavior problems or abuse, have been
Mhm.
abused and things like that. So,
Okay.
and that's all done by the volunteer application.
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
Let's see. Okay. Does your rescue have something in place if a dog is determined unadoptable? I guess I would have to answer that question with a question and ask how would you or how are you categorizing unadoptable?
So my experience in the past is that they have ones that have been returned because they don't fit the home, or it didn't work out, or they didn't get along with another dog. And after that becomes a repetitive behavior, it's almost like nobody applies for the dog
Sure.
because of either the behaviors or the age or whatever. I'm assuming that that the foster person usually probably keeps them until they're adopted or pass away. That's my
Yes.
interpretation.
Yes. Now, what happens is it, it's like a two-prong approach. If there is a medical problem with a dog,
Mhm.
um, we will throw everything we've got at that dog medically to
Okay.
fix it. We
Okay.
work hand in hand with our vets, and we will do whatever needs to be done to hopefully provide that dog quality of life.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there does sometimes come a time that you just can't do anything more medically.
Mhm.
And it's not fair to the dog because they're suffering.
Right.
So at that point in time, then we have to do a humane euthanasia.
Right. Yes.
We've had that happen with parvo pups.
Right.
Um, we don't, but or with an illness that we just know they're just not going to thrive and they're not going to have a quality of life. And usually this is puppies.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And sometimes it's actually taken out of our hands. God steps in and goes,
Right.
this little one's not gonna thrive, so
Mhm.
it's done. So now the other part is behavior problems. Again, we will work hand in hand with our vet, but we also have a trainer that we
Okay.
work with,
That's very interesting.
that we will do what we call board and train.
Okay.
If it's a dog that hasn't been adopted yet, but we've noticed, the fosters have noticed, some aggression or some behavior issues, then the trainer first will work with the foster in their home where the dog's at.
Mhm.
If that doesn't seem to be, working, then we do a board and train.
Okay.
And basically that's exactly what it says. They go to, the
Right.
training facility. The trainer works with them, gets them over,
Mhm.
figures out what the behavior and what the triggers are and things like that. And then, we're able to adopt them. Unfortunately, there are some dogs
Yeah,
that you can't, no matter what you do, you're never going to feel comfortable placing them in a home. And usually it's because they don't give any warning before, they lunge or before they bite or something like
right.
that. Again, we will move heaven and earth to try and, fix that. But if we can't, then we have to make a hard decision.
Right.
And usually we consult with the trainer and the vets.
Mhm.
And if they feel that, nothing more can be done, then they need to be humanely euthanized.
Okay.
So
I think
it's
that
not,
that's quite a blessing for you guys, in the aspect of Harbor of Hope, because you're my third interview and I have yet to hear that intervention. So I
oh,
think
really?
that's wonderful.
Oh, okay.
And maybe they do have it, but during our interview, it never came out. And it's a question I probably hadn't thought of asking about the training part of it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. A lot
that
of
is awesome.
behaviors are just that. They're behaviors that have been
Mhm.
learned and they can be unlearned.
Right.
But there are some dogs that have, there's just something about them
Mhm.
ingrained in them, and it's not
Right.
a learned behavior. It's I don't
Mhm.
know what you'd call it, but it's just there. Okay.
Right. Mhm.
And never, let me tell you this, never have we ever run into that with a pit bull, ever.
Okay.
Never. I
Right.
mean, I'm very much a pit bull advocate
That's
because,
right.
I've seen them, I've been around them. I know how loving and, affectionate
Mhm.
they are and things like that. And we have yet, like I said, to have, you know, any
Right.
problems with our pit bulls.
Right.
We rely very heavily on the trainers as
Okay.
far as, do you think this dog can be rehabilitated? We had a
Right.
situation where there was a dog that bit its owner down in southern Missouri. The owner was arrested because of other things. The
Okay.
dog was confiscated and was set to be euthanized. The ACO down in that particular area reached out and wanted to know if anybody could take this dog. But there was a caveat, and that was you can't get close to him.
Oh,
So we put our heads together and decided we would give it our best try.
right.
So we had to write up a program for the judge to read, to know what we were doing, with the dog, how we were going to try and rehabilitate it. Excuse me. And then I went down and transported it. And Teresa, this was a dog that he never got out of his kennel while I was transporting
Right.
him. And when we took him into the vet, because we took him immediately to the vet did not take him out of the kennel until he had given him, and what's the word I'm looking for?
Tranquilizer or some type of
Thank
a,
you. Yes,
yes.
yes. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before he tranquilized him.
Hmm.
That dog, now granted, it took a while, I think it probably took 8-9 months for us to get him rehabilitated. And he spent a large portion of that time with the trainer.
Right.
Excuse me. But we were ultimately able to find him a home, and he's
Okay.
absolutely great,
Good.
so doesn't always happen that way, but
No, but
yeah.
that is a awesome commitment. It really is. Very
Yeah.
encouraging.
Any dog that we bring in, we will do whatever we can to make sure that they are healthy and that they are safe and that
Hmm.
they are living a quality life. So
Right. Okay.
the money in the rescue, does it all come from the adoption of the rescues or their fundraiser donations? I would say it's probably pretty evenly split.
Okay.
We get most of the, or all of the adoption fees that we have, we turn right around and put back into
Okay.
vetting for, the other dogs that we have. But we also have fundraisers and we have people that donate.
Okay.
There will be times that we may be running low, because right now we've got a litter of puppies. We may be running low on puppy pads
Right.
or puppy food or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times what we will do is we will, put a post on our Facebook page. And I'm just amazed every time we do that, because people just, I don't know where they come from, but the
Right.
next thing you know, we've got puppy pads and food, coming in, at a high rate. So, but I would say it would be evenly split between the actual adoption fees and then the fundraising and
Wonderful.
what do we think is our biggest need? I would say fosters.
Okay.
I don't know if you've talked to any rescues lately, but every rescue is drowning. There are
Yes.
so many dogs
I know.
and not enough rescues and not enough fosters to take them.
Right.
I belong to certain message threads that
Okay.
these people basically are responsible for networking these dogs and finding them homes, getting them out of bad situations and things like that. And there's not a day that goes by that there's not at least 50 to 100 messages on each one of those message threads.
Right.
Dogs
Okay.
that, so fosters are critical.
If there was anything that you could think of that you wanted to add, information wise, that would be,
I'm thinking, shh.
I have
I
4
have-
of my own. 3 are
Well, she-
rescues and 1 visited, never left.
And she only does this when I get on the phone.
I know. Trust me.
And it's
I'm
like
right there with
kids.
you.
It's like
Yes.
kids. My kids used to do that.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
does that.
exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
I don't think there's anything else I need to add other than to just reinforce the fact that our biggest need right now is fosters.
Okay.
And second to that would be people that are willing to do application processing.
Okay.
Because the applications that come in aren't going to get done if we don't have somebody to process them.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to add that I have very well enforced this in all my literature, my articles, and everything that I'm working on, is that the rescue associations are voluntarily based. They're volunteers. I mean, when I was looking to adopt, I kept saying, where are we with this? Where are we with this? And I had to be reminded several times that you're all volunteers, and that some have full-time jobs and full-time families and other commitments that they are helping out of their own spare time. So it is very important to make sure that we are very, very, what I want to say, graceful, give grace to the fact that you guys are all doing a fabulous job, and that this is all a volunteer aspect of your life.
In our rescue, there are only 2 of us that don't work. I don't work because I'm retired, and the other lady doesn't work because she's retired. Everybody else has a regular 8 to 5 job. And in some cases, we have a lot of nurses that work for us. And so they have really strange, odd shifts and hours and days and things like that, but they make it work. So you're right. It's, and people, and I get it. People get frustrated because when you want a dog, you want a dog.
Right.
And that's why we try very hard from start to finish for it to only take 7 to 10 days.
That is
to
commendable.
process. Now, that being said, I should mention, when we have puppies, a litter of puppies, it's not at all uncommon for it to take longer than that. And the reason for that is we may have a litter of puppies, and literally we will get 30 to 40 applications. And those, that takes some time.
Right, exactly. Definitely.
So, yeah. So that's all I can think of.
Okay. Anita, I want to thank you so much for your time for this.
You're
Like I
welcome.
said, I have been trying to do interviews with different associations. I'm trying to expand the what do I want to say? I'm trying to promote pet adoption. I can't take any more dogs. I have 3 rescues of my own and a Labradoodle that came to visit 3.5 years ago and never
Ah,
left.
Okay.
So and like I said, I'm a physical therapist, so I work quite a bit. I used to help with some of the rescues. I would do the processing of the applications, but this was probably years before the pandemic. And it was a lot easier because all we did was go through the application, call a couple vets, maybe call a couple landlords, and it wasn't. But
Mhm,
now that process is getting more detailed because some of
mhm.
the rescues are so diligent that every small, minute detail denies a person.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, I I'm not even sure how I came across Harbor of Hope except for through Facebook. Definitely, I appreciate your time. I have a Facebook group. It's the owners and future owners of pet rescues where we promote a pet adoption. We have about 172 members right now.
Oh, great.
And definitely, I'm going to invite you to that. And I am
Okay.
going to post our interviews after I get it all tidied up. I post the interviews, and we're just trying to promote more pet adoption awareness. I also have
That's
a
great.
website I'll send to you that has articles on how to, what process do I go? How do I adopt?
Yeah.
And then training tips and things like that. So I'm trying to help grow this community. And most of the members in my group are wonderful people and definitely support that. So I so much appreciate your
Great.
time. I had promised my group members that I would do a monthly interview, but what I'm starting to realize is that there are a lot of standardized questions here that are almost duplicate information. Their answers are pretty similar, but I can be honest with you that yours went outside of that, which I love because again, you're a small entity, which is wonderful. And you are actually providing some services that are a little more personalized. I will not say that any adoption or rescue association is not as good as any of the others, but you
Sure.
all have individually and personalized services that are outside the realm of typical. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love
And,
that.
and you almost have to, and you have to be able to make changes in the rescue to policies.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just, if you're going to survive, you have to be able to do that. You have to
Right.
be able to go with the flow. You have to be able to
Hmm.
adjust to what the climate is right now, as far
Right.
as adopting dogs
Hmm.
and people who, the pandemic, we adopted quite a few dogs during the pandemic, as did a lot of rescues.
Right.
Okay. We've been very fortunate that we have only had, at the most, I think maybe 3 returned,
Okay. That's
um,
commendable.
which which I think is good. I could be
Hmm.
way off
Oh,
base on,
yeah.
but I'm pretty sure it's only 3, maybe 4 at the most,
Okay.
considering the number that we adopted out during the
Right.
pandemic.
Right.
Because now people have gone back to work and they
I
just don't
know.
have
That's just
time
it.
for them.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, we have to, we have to be flexible, and we constantly laugh about the fact that we started our rescue just before the pandemic. Oh, yay.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
exactly.
so we had to make adjustments to our thing about consistent vetting,
Right.
because there were a lot of vets that were totally shut down
I
during that.
know. Yeah.
And we ran into situations where people, said, and we could verify that they were consistent up until the time the
Yes.
pandemic hit, and then they couldn't get into a vet,
Right.
so
Yeah, you do
again,
have to take that consideration.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Right.
So, okay, well,
That's all I have. And
all
I
right.
certainly appreciate your time once again.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much. And
Okay.
I look forward to getting on your Facebook page.
That's awesome. I can't wait. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Anita.
Teresa. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.